So, in this video, we'll talk about how the language of French was brought to Britain and the Norman Conquest. This is the second part of History of English Literature, which is the continuation of the medieval era. If in case you people are new here, my name is Hira Durrani, and today we are going to talk about the Norman Conquest. So, Norman Conquest brought the language of French to Britain. They were just the dacoits, so just chor the, but they just attacked French. So, France was occupied, and then their culture, they adopted their culture and learned French. People of Norman conquest were known as Normandy. The people of Norman conquest they came to England and imposed their French language in Britain. अब अगर आप लोगों को याद हो तो नॉर्मन कॉन्क्वेस्ट जो है वो ब्रिटेन आया था, वो फ्रेंच लेके आया था अपनी लैंग्वेज, फिर इन लोगों ने इंग्लैंड पे अटैक किया और उसके बाद इन लोगों ने इंग्लैंड में जो कि ब्रिटेन है उसमें फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज इंट्रोड्यूस की. So the very first language was of Anglo-Saxons. It got suppressed and then a French language got mixed up with English language. Now they became Anglo-Norman or Norman means Northman, people from North. The people of Norman conquest became brilliant or the outclass, the elite people of England. And now the elite language was French since English got suppressed. So English was now the language of poor class or middle people. Old English literature got affected as French language took over English. The period of 1066 to 1200. In 1200, English language again rises and it became Anglo-Norman. English language became the language of Anglo-Norman, and now the University of Oxford and Cambridge established in this time, where London was considered to be the hub of writing. अब जब नॉर्मन कॉन्क्वेस्ट के लोग जो हैं रूल करने आए थे, इन लोगों ने फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज को डोमिनेंट और इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज को सप्रेस कर दिया था. इसीलिए इलीट क्लास के लोगों की लैंग्वेज फ्रेंच हुई थी और पुअर क्लास या मिडिल क्लास लोगों की लैंग्वेज इंग्लिश बन गई थी. लेकिन 1200 में इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज एकदम से राइज़ हो गई थी और इस टाइम पे यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ ऑक्सफोर्ड और कैम्ब्रिज भी इस्टेब्लिश हो गए थे और इस टाइम पे लंदन वाज कंसिडर्ड टू बी द हब ऑफ राइटिंग, क्योंकि लोग अब राइटिंग जो है मैन्यूस्क्रिप्ट में लिखा करते थे और प्रिंटिंग जो है वो कॉमन नहीं था, प्रिंटिंग प्रेस, इसीलिए लोग अपने हैंड रिटन मैन्यूस्क्रिप्ट्स लिखते थे. तो मैन्यूस्क्रिप्ट्स लिखने के टाइम पे वो राइटिंग्स बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट थी और एक्सपेंसिव भी थी. Okay, so now in 1200, English language when revived, it was totally changed, and this time the language was known as in-between language. Now this kind of writing is different from Old English and Modern English. In this era, a certain kind of literature was written known as a Romance literature. अब रोमांस लिटरेचर का मतलब ये है कि इट इज़ मोर ऑफ अ प्लेटोनिक लव रादर दैन एमोरस. प्लेटोनिक वो होता है जिसमें कोई लस्टफुल डिज़ायर्स नहीं होते और एमोरस में लस्टफुल डिज़ायर्स होते हैं. फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल, इफ़ वी लव समथिंग, मे बी आवर पेरेंट्स और आर्मी या अपने कंट्री को लव करना, बीइंग पेट्रियाटिक, तो वो जो है प्लेटोनिक लव होगा. वेदर इफ़ लाइकिंग समबडी और लविंग समबडी, दैट वुड बी काउंटेड इन amorous love. So it is more for the love of country or a soldier love for country. Normans brought this kind of literary piece to Britain around 13th century, and a poet, layman's brought poetry 1600. These are written in the 1600 lines. It is a poem and it consists of the history of England. So while writing something about a country, there's always the platonic love rather than amorous. So layman spread a poem known as a Chronicle of Britain. This poem marks the line to be called as historiography of England. After Anglo-Saxon, this was the first time of English language that got importance, and after this literary piece in English language, a series of poems and literary pieces were written in English. Before this, all of the literary pieces were written in French, if you people remember. So we have some important works in English after this time known as the Ormulum, second is the Owl and the Nightingale, and third is the Layman's Pratt. Now talking about the religious poems, so we got one, the Cursor Mundi. It was a historical and religious poem where author was unknown, as in medieval period authors never used to mention their names below the poem. Such poems are mentioned but without the name of the author. So now the famous works of medieval era is rigid rule of ample and cleanness of patience. Talking about the 13th and 14th century, it is also known as the age of Chaucer. So Chaucer's family relations were with the royal court, and after the age of 17 he gets the permission to enter royal court. He got a job in Courtice of Ulster. He joins Edward III English army, and this is also known as the War of 100 Years, which was between England and France. He fought that war from the side of English army because he always used to love his own language, which was English rather than French. In 1360 he was caught by another army, and a huge amount of £16 were paid to free him. इस टाइम पे £16 बहुत ह्यूज अमाउंट था. Then he came back and was appointed as the royal court member. So for 10 years, Chaucer worked for Edward, who was the king, right? So King Edward court, and he figures out the use of French language in court, but decides to remain indifferent and to choose his own native language. मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया he was so fond of English rather than French, but French का influence बहुत था. Then he started learning French. So now French writers greatly influenced literary pieces, and Chaucer learned a lot from French language. One of the famous work, Roma de la Rose, he got trained by learning from it and tried to translate this. This French work greatly influenced Chaucer for his early works. So now French inspired Chaucer, and he started writing a work, Book of the Duchess, in 1369. It was an elegy. एलिजी मतलब एक ऐसी पोम लिखी जाती है किसी के गम या याद में. So King Edward used to send Chaucer to different places where Chaucer used to learn a lot about life and people. It was an innovative for Chaucer to write unique poetry. इस टाइम पे किंग एडवर्ड जो है चौसर की फैमिली से इन टच था, और इसीलिए वो चौसर को डिफरेंट जगहों पे भेजता था to learn about life and poetry. So he has traveled a lot throughout his life, and he traveled to Italy after a French. He got inspired from Italian language, and this was the time of the emergence of Renaissance, which is also known as the rebirth of art. He wrote several works like Parliament of Falls, House of Fame, Legend of Good Women, it's known for the prologue, and Annalata and Archite. In 1377, King Edward died. Contemporary poets were John Gower, William Langland. So his famous book is Piers Plowman, and John Whitcliffe. He translated Bible and used to talk bad about church. Now there were two religious notions. One was the Catholic and one was the Protestants. So because of Catholic and Protestants, a movement was launched known as Lombard movement. So the most important event in this era was the emergence of the catastrophic plague, the Black Death, which was in 1348. It washed away 60% of the population. In 1387, his wife died. In 1388, Canterbury Tales was started. 1389, he was appointed as royals, and in 1398 he completed his work of Canterbury Tales. In the 1400 he died, and then in 1556 his grave was moved to another place, that place was known as the Poets' Corner. So in 15th century the literature was considered to be the death, because at that time Chaucer died and there was no emergence or the unique innovative literature. In 15th century people copied Chaucer and the originality faded away. In 15th century prose emerged, and Thomas Malory wrote De Morta de Arthur. So of this time this was one of the important prose of 15th century. And then William Caxton, who was the first English painter, and he was an important person. He introduced printing press, and as books were sold on high rates, or they were expensive in the 15th century. Now talking about the writers and their unique works, so let's begin. Geoffrey Chaucer wrote, "All good things must come to an end." Second is William Langland. Patience is a virtue that carries a lot of hope for the future. Then we have John Grover. Love is the root of all good and evil. Sir Thomas Malory. Heart of the wise is in the hand of the fool. Marie de France. A heart without love is a flower without water. Next we have is the Dante Alighieri. The path to paradise begins in hell. Dark love alone is sufficient to justify everything. Giovanni Boccaccio, the sweetest joy are always mixed with tears. Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manners of things shall be well. William Shakespeare, to be or not to be, this is the question. Now this was from the one of his play Hamlet. These were the important writers of the medieval era. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like, subscribe and share. I feel like you people have not subscribed to my channel already, so hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll meet you guys in the next video with the Renaissance era, inshallah. Till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.